The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Node.js in the Enterprise, a primer. And our guest speaker today is Naveen Raj Gopalan. He is the Associate Architect with Ness Technologies. Naveen Raj Gopalan works as an Associate Architect at Ness Technologies and is a prime developer involved in solutioning with cutting-edge tools and technologies. He has been responsible for execution of projects involving work in challenging requirements and versatile technologies such as Node.js, Jade, Express.js, Hippo CMS, Java, HTML5, Adobe Flex, Adobe Air, Y-Files, and JavaScript. His passion includes listening to trance and traveling to nature spots. So, without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Naveen. Naveen, can you hear us? It seems we have a little problem. Naveen, can you hear us? Hello, Naveen. Can you hear me? Naveen, you're not audible. Can you please check your audio settings? It seems we have a small problem. Naveen, I think you can hear me. I request you to quickly dial in again to this session because the audience and neither I can hear you. Yes, Naveen, I request you to dial in again. I'm sorry for the inconvenience caused. Please be online. Naveen will join us today very shortly. Hi, Naveen. Can you hear?
Aradhana.
Hi, Naveen. Yeah, your voice is audible now. Can you please start the session?
Sure. Good afternoon to one and all. Sorry for the slight technical glitch. So we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic today. Cutting edge technology that is picking up popularity, and we are going to see how we can leverage this in the enterprise. I'm Naveen Rajgopalan, working as an associate architect for Ness Technologies at Bangalore. So Ness Technologies is a global IT service provider that shares your goals. We at Ness are into software product engineering, enterprise application integration, software distribution, outsourcing, turnkey application development, and a lot more. So let's take a look at what do I have in store for you today. So to keep everybody interested and excited, we'll be looking at the trends, followed by a refresher section. So we have a whole bunch of beginners who are trying to delve into Node.js. So we have a refresher section, with a hello world example on Node.js. We will then look at the W's of Node.js. We have a bunch of demos as well scheduled there. We'll then go on to look at Node.js in the enterprise. We'll look at the different facets, the development, the debugging, CI and deployment, and as well as scaling and monitoring. We'll go on to look at a case study that was implemented in Ness Technologies and how we leveraged Node.js. We have an interesting takeaway section, and as well as we will look at what people are doing with this technology around the globe. And the very last section is what's in it for each of us. So we have folks from different places joining us today. So we look at what is the takeaway for a developer, an architect, managers, and as well as sales champions. The trends. So these trends are captured as of January 2014. So the first slide that you see here is basically the Node.js market position as of 29 Jan 2014. So this slide shows the trends in the usage of the Node.js servers. And as you can see, Node.js is on the rise. And if you take a look at, closely behind, you have something called as Nginx. So the Nginx project started with a strong focus on high concurrency, high performance, and low memory usage. So Nginx is as well used hand in hand with Node.js as a forward proxy service that will point your clients to the actual Node.js web server. So that's one of the reasons why you see Nginx on the rise as well. Right? So the next trends, what you see here is the search terms, the recent interest over time around Node.js. So we have a whole bunch of stuff around Node.js, right? We've got, we will see in the upcoming slides, but some of these technologies that work with Node.js, you can see there is a gradual rise in the search trends in the recent times. The third trend is on the job market. So as you can see, there is a large demand for Node.js. There has been a progressive increase in the demand for the technologies and the number of projects that's opening up in this space. Let's look at the refresher section, a very simple hello world example so people can understand, what this is. So what does it take, right? So folks, who are blank slates as far as Node.js is concerned, what does it take to help you get started? So all you need to do is download, go to this site, hit the install, and you have your basic requirements to get started on Node.js development of your system. You have something called as an NPM, a Node Package Manager, which is something like the Ruby's gems. So it will help you to get the modules what you need, like the Ruby gems. Right? So once you have this, you can actually hit the command prompt. I'm just going to be switching to my command prompt now. Once you have this, you can check if the version of Node is the latest, right? So let's look at a very simple hello world example. As you can see, so we just have a server created, we have a HTTP module here, we have a server created off that, and this runs on a server 3009, and I send to the, as a response, I send this back as hello world, right? So let's see this in action. I have a runner. Just going to extract this from my runner. I have it running on 3000 port. I'm going to be opening this on a browser. 2009. So I'm just going to be launching host 3009. I just have hello world here. So let's look at the W's of Node.js. So what is Node.js? So Node.js is a JavaScript platform which uses the capability of V8 runtime. Node.js has a very fast event loop model. It is easy to build and as well as scalable. So the building blocks of Node.js is a confluence of three ideas. The JavaScript rich support, the rich JavaScript user base that we already have, the high performance of the V8 engine, so the Google Chrome basically runs off this engine. And as well as the third is the system abstraction which follows from Unix. So essentially JavaScript rising popularity has brought a lot of changes. We are talking about running JavaScript on the server, client, and as well as in the form of JSON over the network. Right? This would have been hard to imagine a few years back. Right? So now let's look at why Node.js. So the event-driven model that has a fast event loop does not allow latency bubbles to propagate orthogonally. So as you can see, it's a non-blocking I/O. So we will look at in the next few slides what do each one of this mean. The event-driven term, the non-blocking versus a blocking model. Node is extremely good to handle load, and as well as building real-time applications is pretty easy with Node.js. Using the power of WebSockets. So let's look at a simple example on non-blocking model of Node.js. So as you can see on the screen, we have, well, for now you can ignore the first line there, and essentially you can focus on console.log file is read. So you have just an alert statement there, and then you have another alert outside the function which is console.log next operation. So in the generic synchronous world of programming, right, so you would always expect file is read to be displayed first and followed by next operation. Whereas in async programming like this, let's say you have an operation to the database. You're connecting to a database and you have to fetch a large amount of data. So the user is blocked until this data is got back, right? So in the case of Node, it is possible to start the communication and then perform processing that does not require the I/O be completed. So what you see, the output is essentially next operation and file is read. So you could do other processing that does not need your I/O to be completed, which is the power of a non-blocking model, right? So let's look at the next example of WebSockets, right? So server-side pushing can be done with ease with Node.js. So let us look at a simple a chat application, a very simple chat application with Node. So I'm just pulling up my browser and I'm launching a test application on localhost 3000. Right? So let's say the first user is Naveen, and I'm bringing up another instance of the browser. Just give me a minute. You should see it in a few minutes. So I'm just going to launch two versions of this. Right? So in the first, let me have a user called maybe so you see you're basically connected and you have Prabhu as well connected here. So let's say I'm going to type in from the first browser. I'm switching to the browsers. I'm typing from the first browser, hi Prabhu. I'm just simulating a simple chat application, but with Node.js, and the code is pretty straightforward and simple. That's the objective of the demo. So I just type in something, I switch to the other browser, and you see what I have typed here. And let's say it says hi Naveen, and you see hi Naveen on the other side. So let's say I close, Prabhu's chat window, right? So as I'm here, let's say I'm closing Prabhu's chat window. So you would see, okay, that was actually Naveen. So Naveen has disconnected. So essentially, I'm trying to simulate a chat application. So what we're looking at is a capability provided by Node.js to provide server-side pushing. So this concept can be implemented into multiple areas, right? So if you're looking at trending modules, if you're looking at what is being searched right now, you have multiple use cases, so stock applications. So the concept is pretty powerful. And you absolutely see that there is no delays. This is further extended into building, apps for real-time monitoring to get the, the website traffic and stuff like that. So this simple concept is actually elaborated to a whole lot of products. So the protocols supported by Node.js are HTTP and TCP. So the example on the right side is a HTTP server created. So the Hello World example, we saw a plain vanilla server created. In this particular example, we see, the server launched with the Express, a web framework, a middleware, where we'll talk about more in the coming slides. So all it takes to create a server using Express.js is just, the line that you see here. HTTP create server app, listen, app.get off port, and you're set. So let's see what are the different facets that help us build an enterprise level application using Node.js. So as of today, there are close to 22,000 modules floating around, right? So I have picked a few that we used for our case study in Ness Technologies, right? So Express is a web development framework and a high performance middleware that lets you build web applications with ease. Connect is a middleware for Node that lets you do a whole bunch of activities like session management, error handler, basic auth, and a lot more. Passport is a very interesting authentication middleware, basically, for your security, and it is built on a provider model. So it supports a single sign-on, OAuth for Twitter, Facebook, and so on. So what is an advantage with this? Let's say you have a internal application, and you have this application supported on, say, a password from your local DB, or let's say it's supported, of an LDAP, right? So you decide that you want to, tag this to the social world, right? So it's just few lines of code changes, and you have your passport module integrated to either the Twitter or Facebook. So it's a very good, a module, to basically productize your application, right? So Restler is a HTTP client library for Node.js. So you have REST services. You can use this to connect to it and get your data. Mongoose is an elegant MongoDB object modeling for Node.js. Jade is designed primarily for server-side templating in Node.js. So it helps you develop the UI with an object-oriented approach. AMQP is an advanced messaging queue protocol and supports the publish-subscribe model. So if your application has requirements to work off queues like ZeroMQ or RabbitMQ, your life would be made a lot easy by using AMQP. Socket.io, we just saw an example of Socket.io, a simple chat application. So it helps you create real-time apps with ease, right, across browsers and mobile devices. So this is about the development. So let's look at the debugging. Log4j. So those of you from Java background would know what is Log4j. So you have the entire capability available using Log4j as well. You can set thresholds, choose your appenders and do the whole bunch of stuff just as you did in Log4j. Node inspector lets you to debug. So you can step through your code, add breakpoints, inspect the variables, object properties, or edit and see what the value reflects to, and so on. Onion logging is simple and fast JSON logging library. So something like Log4j, but the output is different, so you can tag it to your different tools for analysis and so on. Right? So one of the most important things that we see is the continuous integration, continuous inspection, and continuous deployment, right? So this is definitely possible with Node.js. So Grunt is essentially a task runner, and it has a whole suite of plugins under its umbrella. So it lets you to minify JavaScript, CSS, HTML, uglify them, unit testing using Node Unit, Node Mock, and as well as super test. So if you have multiple routes in your application, you can as well test the route using super test. You've got linting ability, right? So you can automate the whole flow. So we will look at an example over here on Grunt, right? So as you can see, on my top left, you have a folder called this, and below them you have right now the concatenated file and the files and CSS and JavaScript files available. So I'm just going to be clearing this off. So let's use grunt clean. So as you can see, the files that were created are removed. So I'm going to run my grunt task now, and you would see the concatenated versions and minified versions of the file available here. Let me also show you the linting ability. So let's say I wanted to run the lint before I concatenated my file. So I would type in grunt js hint before cat. Right, so you see that it's done without errors. So after concat, I have clubbed in a few third-party libraries as well to show you the output after concat, some errors introduced. Right, so it would give you line-wise precise details on where the code is basically violated. So grunt. So let's also now look at running unit test cases, right? Grunt node unit. have a few test cases run, so you can see the output as well for them. So what Grunt lets you do is you can automate this whole stuff, right? So you could be probably you have a need, just like in our project where you have a JavaScript, multiple JavaScripts, and you need an aggregated form of this, and you need this to be available on the development server after every build. You know, the entire 9 yards is available using Node.js. So you could hook it up with Jenkins and have the code quality output through Sonar. So the entire 9 yards is supported, right? So let's move on. So scaling and monitoring, right? Like I said earlier, Nginx is a commodity hardware solution to help you scale Node.js apps, right? So Nodejitsu and Heroku are basically platform as a service that lets you host your Node.js apps on the cloud. Now, Strong Loop is from StrongOps and is a product that lets you do something like what Splunk does today. It lets you do performance monitoring. NodeTime lets you do performance analytics on your Node.js application. So Node.js is essentially single-threaded. So let's say you run into an issue where your app crashes due to an uncaught exception, right? Forwarder lets you to essentially bring back your node process, right? And NSSM lets you configure the Node.js app as a Windows service. So this is an example using NodeTime. So NodeTime gives you a whole bunch of features. So as you can see, you can capture the process of over a CPU time. You can see the process for CPU usage. You can see the file system for an average response, and you can inspect the objects within them. You can do the CPU profilers. So this was run over a period of 10 seconds, right? So then you can set alerts to trigger based on the available memory and so on your system. So let's look at a case study, right? So this is a generic enterprise architecture, right? Complex and large in nature. As you can see, we have a whole bunch of layers over here. We have internal facing apps like TMS, CMS, apps portal, consumed by kiosks, mobile devices, email, targeted on multiple platforms, Unix, Windows, the need to connect to multiple databases, need to support, with queues like RabbitMQ. We have existing web services. So you could run into a situation, right? So there are a lot of advantages what you saw with Node.js. So the strategy that we employed was to target a cog of this whole beast, right? So we targeted just the TMS, a generic product, a translation management system, right? So we just targeted this part. You could run into a lot of challenges, right? So this is a legacy code and we wanted to notify it. So you could run into a lot of challenges convincing to use Node.js, right? So when we decided to implement this with Node.js, we had a whole bunch of questions. Can we support this on, do we have connectivity to MongoDB? Do we have connectivity to CouchDB? Can we get data from SQL? Can you connect to HPay? So you could run into a whole bunch of questions, right? The ability to connect to RabbitMQ. So convincing your boss is a different section altogether. But yes, Node.js does have a whole bunch of advantages. So we look at the small portion over here, the translation management system. So as you can see, as the architecture comes up on your screens. The TMS is consumed by a website and by mobile. So we have responsive web design support. The client side is pretty thin. So we have HTML5, JavaScript, CSS3, Ajax, JSON, and jQuery. In the WebPress layer, we have Node.js, Express.js, Jade, Stylus, a strong CSS preprocessor. We have the RabbitMQ. In the previous version of Node, we could not connect to the MS SQL, right? So right now, the new version does have the support to MS SQL as well. But we had two options. One was to use the existing .NET web service and connect to the MS SQL, or have a bridge. We have a bridge called Edge.js, so which basically brings in line your entire code from .NET and makes it accessible under the JavaScript hood, which is something pretty awesome. And so what are the other features that you see here, right? So the ability to connect to multiple databases. We also have solution implemented for caching with HTML5 and session storage, and Node cache is something to again look at. So there are multiple use cases, right? So that was worked off in our application. So some of the use cases are static dynamic phrase management, rich search. So rich search essentially had the capability to see what is being searched right now. So, and we also had context sensitive help. So essentially this is the use case that helped us target a cog, like I said. So we did not try to build a system from bottom up, but we targeted a legacy system and utilized the advantages of Node.js, what it's best doing, right? So what are the takeaways, right? So as much as I love Node.js and like to evangelize the technology, there is a common belief, right? So Node.js is a silver bullet for solutioning all your requirements. So this is a myth. So it's very important to understand what Node is not good at, right? So do not use Node.js for static assets, right? It is not a replacement to your current CDN servers or to transfer heavy-duty CSS files. If your code is entirely synchronous, then you're really not leveraging the benefits of Node.js. So there's no real advantage using it, right? So if you have any CPU intensive applications, right, probably with heavy duty algorithms running off maybe C or C++, do not try to move that to Node.js. Forward migration can be tricky, right? So you got to have a knowledge about the stability index, indicating if a feature is deprecated or experimental or unstable or stable or API frozen or locked state. So this could be tricky. I mean, this is just as any other technology. So, and yeah, so the debugging memory leaks could also be tricky. So you got to have a modularized approach and code, into chunks, right? So the takeaway, right? So we have seen basically the ability to build fast parallel processing web applications. We have seen the set of constraints. So using Jade and Node.js combination, you can also build screen workflows where based on the authentication, you could have different workflows per screen. And the code that we guys built with absolutely no change was tried and tested on Windows, Linux, and as well as on the cloud, right? So let's see what people are doing with Node.js around the globe. Right? So LinkedIn has the entire server side for the mobile software stack built out of Node.js. Yahoo is using this to build a platform alongside YUI for publishers. Mozilla is working off a browser ID concept where you just log in once and you don't have to log into multiple other devices and sites. So there are load testing tools which are built by Mozilla to simulate users. ITV guide apps built as service using Node.js for AOL, TV, and so on. The Storyfy mobile app is something pretty cool. So you can actually look at the social networking and create your story and publish it. It's targeted at journalists. The Shopaboo app is again something that's pretty inspiring. So for those of you from the e-commerce world, right? So this is a real life scenario put to use. So let's say you're going for shopping, watch with your friend, right? So you would, the minute you walk into the showroom, you look at the watches, you would consult your friend, does this look good, or do you want to look at another one? So the exact same field is provided on the site where you have your online friends available just like in Facebook on the bottom right hand side, and you can drag and drop the product of your interest, take a feedback, and then decide you want to buy this or not. A very simple concept, but generating a lot of money for some people, right? So these are some of the examples. So Hummingbird is a pretty interesting product too. So it's for real-time web analytics. So folks from system operations would be really interested to look at this real-time web analytics using Node.js and built out of WebSockets. Right. So we also have CMS being built from Node.js. We have crawlers being built. So the Observer product built on Node.js is also pretty awesome, right? So folks from the support teams, right? So most of the times you run into a situation where users would probably run into a problem on your site and they report it, and you would have to try and replicate your steps and try to fix that. What the Observer product does is it's primarily built out of Phantom.js, right? So you have a mirror image of what the user is seeing at any given point of time, right? So you can go back in time, look at what the user was seeing, replicate the steps, and you can find a solution for the problem that happened. So that is something interesting as well. The golf, so we have apps built for golf as well, which gives you a bird's eye view for golfers to understand, where they are relative to the destination and bunkers and stuff like that. Big data and Node.js is also set to take off to a great start sometime later this year. You will see a lot more use cases being implemented off this. So you do have essentially map reduce programs built off Node.js. You can, like you saw, you have the capability to connect off multiple databases. You can write extractors. You can pull data to HDFS and query off HBase. So you're going to see a lot of use cases come up later this year around this as well. Right. So what's in it for each one of us, right? So we have a whole bunch of freshers and student community as well joining us today. So the trends should inspire you to learn the technology. As developers, we have a whole lot of things to take away from Node.js, right? Of course, understanding the pitfalls. So what you're essentially seeing is JavaScript taking on the server side, the client, and as well as over the network in the form of JSON. We have a whole bunch of modules. We saw some of the most prominent modules that's being leveraged. The continuous integration, continuous deployment support. From solutioning perspective, we have the capability to support real-time applications such as stock, trending applications, real-time web analytics, real-time dashboards, which has become a requirement on any enterprise architecture, as a part of the governance model. So the non-blocking operations, so if you have anything to do with file I/O or let's say database, so Node.js is a good option. Excellent handling queued inputs, right, from queues such as RabbitMQ or ZeroMQ. Node is also very good at heavy-duty data streaming, right? So you can process files while they are streaming. So there is also an increased solutions around Node as proxy servers, which is again a very good space to explore. And like I said, with the big data solutions are on the rise. And system operations team as well have a whole lot of things to look forward to, like the Observer product and the Hummingbird product. So from the manager's point of view, right, so Node.js would give you an approach to cumulative model of development, right? So you're dealing with a whole bunch of mashups. So you got to target, like I said, the cog. And deciding between a strategic versus tactical solutions, where I gave the example of using Edge.js than building the whole, the services using Node. As sales champions, yes, the time to market is pretty quick. Architecture is slick, lean, and mean, and it's definitely an attraction to the customers. And there are a whole bunch of success stories, right? So I mean, right from mobile apps to website for e-commerce or solutions for business intelligence. So I encourage each one of you to take a look at nodejs.org, /industry. So there's a whole bunch of success stories. And the Node ecosystem is growing at an insane pace. And, I welcome each one of you to contribute and share to this new space, right? So we have the questions pool actually increasing, so I guess I'll give more time to the questions section now. We're good to take questions. Aradhana?
Yes, Naveen, thank you for the insightful presentation. I request you to take up the questions now. I request you to read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to your insights. So I'm sure you can see the question that has come to you.
Sure.
You can start taking them.
All right. So the first question is it required to use Express to develop a large application with AngularJS, right? So we have alternate to Express too, like Jetty, right? But Express is more popular. And the frameworks around Express, right? Now we've got applications being built out of Backbone.js, AngularJS, and so on. So there are a whole suite of these available. So each one has a pros and cons. So it is not necessary to always choose, AngularJS and an Express combination. So what about the security achieved by Node like Java on server is the next question. So well, you can definitely look at Passport. Passport is pretty awesome. Like we talked about the security part of it. It's a pretty awesome, a module available. So you'll definitely, it will serve your purpose, and as well as, it's not like prone to hacking. So what is the dependency on Chrome? So there's no dependency on Chrome. So what we actually looked at, so this question is posted by Satish. So what we essentially looked at is the runtime, right? So the runtime that Chrome uses is as well the V8 engine. So there is no dependency on Chrome as such. So any particular framework you would like to share apart from Express for large scale application? Yes. So if you're looking, if the question is where do I go from here in terms of looking for frameworks and other stuff, so you may want to look at how do you build Node.js apps with Backbone.js. You could look at how do you use AngularJS with Node.js. You could also look at building Knockout.js and Node.js apps, right, with a model view model pattern, and understand why do we need each one of these patterns. Right. So Soumya has a question about, will you please show a basic project structure in IDE? Right. So Node IDE is actually pretty simple, right? So I just use Sublime. You have a whole suite of options available. So you have a plugin available for Eclipse. You have a plugin available for Visual Studio, but you got Sublime as well, which is pretty lightweight. So the structure. So if you're looking at the structure, and the advantage for fresh JavaScript folks to come in and start developing is what is provided, like the capabilities like Express, right? So you don't have to worry about creating your structure. All you need to do is, let's say you want to create a project called web application. So you just have to type in Express web application, something like what the Maven archetypes do. So you have your whole project created with the custom folder structures and stuff like that, and you're set to get started. Okay, so why we prefer MongoDB with Node? So this is like out of the context of this application. So most, more and more applications are targeted towards the NoSQL. So it's not that we prefer MongoDB with Node, but it's a support that we have from Node. So how is caching implemented using Node.js, right? So you have essentially a module called as Node Cache. So you can use this in cohesion with HTML's session storage. So Node Cache is a module available, and there are actually brilliant solutions available around caching too, implemented with Node.js. So Taral Shah has a question about, you created workflow with Node.js. Can you elaborate more on these workflows? Yeah, so essentially what I mean by workflows is, now we have multiple users and multiple roles defined. So based on a role, right, now we have a screen. So the screen has a specific, let's say a button and something there. I mean, any UI components there, right? So for a user A. Now when a user B sees it, he has a completely different flow. For example, you may want to support your device on the mobile in a different way, and you want to support your on the website, your UI is going to look different. So this kind of activity can be done with ease, using Jade. So it lets you to create, the whole master page. You can extend it, and do a whole sort of stuff, and supporting RWD as well. Right. So is the chat code implemented in Node.js is a running app which we can use for our admin chat functionality on our website? Yes. So the chat application is pretty simple. I mean, very, very simple. I can probably host it off someplace and you can take it away. So it is hosted off Node.js, and you can just directly plug and play it. So that's the ease with which you can actually build, server-side pushing with Node.js. So Shashank has a question, what would be a suggested learning path to start with Node.js? Any prerequisites and related resources? I would say, well, this is my take. So I would say you should probably have a fair understanding of JavaScript, or if not, just start learning JavaScript, and then you could dive into Node.js. So there are some good books, right? So you got the Node Beginner book by Manuel Kiesling. Then you have the Jumpstart Node.js by Don Nugent. Then of course the Node.js recipes, right? A whole bunch of solutions available there as well. So it's a problem statement and a solution kind of a book. So that's pretty good as well. Those are like some of the leads on what you can do, and then probably investigate on certain use cases, right? So why do you need to connect to RabbitMQ? Let's create a small application connecting to RabbitMQ, or you want to develop a Node app, for a mobile device, right? So you can try to create that. Then look at, with a combination of AngularJS, Backbone.js. I mean, we could have future sessions on those too, but you can look at how do you work in sync with, the other frameworks around, and what are the best practices around them, and why do we need each one of this. So the next question is, so which platform will you recommend for production deployment? Unix or Windows, or why? Right? So essentially, we have hosted this of Windows for certain parts of our Node applications, and as well as Unix. So the question does not come whether you want to run it off Unix or on Windows, right? So it depends on the number of processes, right, that you have, the CPU cores. So Node.js is essentially single-threaded. So the number of processors would define the actual performance of your application. So more than the platform, right, than having a debate on do I host it off Unix or Windows, you got to try and target it. If you're looking at large-scale integration, so you got to try and target it off multi-core machines. Does Node.js scale okay in production systems? Yes. So you can definitely scale with Node.js. So we talked about Nginx. So you can use this with a combination of cluster as well. So you have a module called cluster. So you can use cluster and Nginx hand in hand, and it does scale pretty well. So how do you handle session in Node? So we talked about the connect module. So the connect module lets you to create session. If you're referring to as the sticky sessions, yes, connect module is what lets you do that. So Pawan has a tricky question, right? Do you think it's problematic approach that Node.js is designed as single thread because each request is treated on an event and handled in a callback? So it's a tricky question, right? So it is definitely not problematic, right? So Node.js is designed to take care of async programming. So you've got to embrace the async way of coding, right? So async works well on a single thread, right? So when you're in a cluster, when you're working off a cluster, let's say, right? So Node.js would spawn a new process, enables the port sharing with master, would help you set up a parent and the child communication channel, and as well as it will provide an API to differentiate the master and worker process, right? So if you have, let's say, any uncaught exceptions, right? So that's what is the fearful part, right? So if you have any uncaught exceptions, it can bring your worker down, right? So in these cases, you can actually automate and stop the worker from listening, and then stop it listening from the port, kill it, and then you can actually fork a new thread from the master as well, right? So I guess you ran through the entire set of questions.
We still have numbers of questions coming in to us. So I have just provided a question with.
Okay.
Can you please go through?
Okay. So we have a few questions. Okay, so somebody wants to have a look at how did you use server-side pushing. So I don't think we have enough time to look at the entire code for each and every example in this particular case, but you could always connect back to me, and I can probably share the code with you. So somebody, Shashwat has a question. No question is stupid, Shashwat, so you're fine asking this. So he would like to know, when do I have to choose Node.js, right? So we looked at a slide. We essentially saw, the choices you make while using Node.js. So you have, let's say, backend operations, and you do not want your operations to be blocked, but you want the other operations that could be done in the meantime. Node.js is a good option. You have a need for real-time apps to be built. Node.js is a very good option. So we also saw, the proxying solutions. Proxying solutions are a good option. There are frameworks being built around, the caching frameworks alone. So you could have cache part of systems as well built. You want to build mobile applications, with server-side pushing. Node.js is a very good choice as well. So you may want to definitely take a look at nodejs.org/industry and look at the different success stories, right? So which will give you, a lot of inspiration to actually delve and look at use cases where you can use this technology. So Savita has a question, is it another server layer before hitting the actual server layer? No. Node.js is the server layer. So what you're looking at is essentially JavaScript being utilized in the server side, which is one of the, again, an advantage, right? So if you research a little, you would know having JavaScript knowledge, and you've leveraged it all these years in the UI, you could reuse this knowledge in the server side and as well as over the network. So reduction in concepts help you to build a more efficient application. So it's a simplified design. So the next question is, can I make standalone application in Node.js which I can integrate with legacy application written in PHP or .NET? Yes. Well, you can definitely build standalone applications. Well, Abhishek, the use case that we talked about has a use case like that. So where we had a communication channel with .NET. So definitely it is possible. So please feel free to get in touch with me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or on my official email ID. So I guess we're running out of time. We can wind up the session now.
Yes. If you have anything to sum up the session, you can please proceed and give your final remarks to the audience, and we can close the session.
So this session serves as a primer to Node.js. So there are, again, just to keep people interested. So there are plenty of use cases that can be looked at in the future. So, and the space, the Node.js space is definitely on the rise. And I encourage each one of you to, make it part and parcel of your product and try to, add more to the space. Yep. Thank you, friends, and wish you all a nice evening.
I'm really thankful to our guest speaker for conducting this wonderful webinar. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Naveen, for all your time. Hope you have a great evening ahead.